unnecessarily tired.
Oh, yeah. And we're not even at the hump day. Well, on the verge of getting there, right?
Yeah, no, I just got done with a midterm for another class, so I'm like kind of burnt out, kind of not. You know what I mean?
Oh, wow. I guess it is midterm season for most, huh?
Yeah, cybersec. So got that one out of the way. Nice presentation. All the bells and whistles. You know how it is.
Good for you. Yeah. So here we go, guys. We're gonna get started. I've actually created a quiz. Um, it's gonna open up, I believe, right at 7:10. And it's just going to be five multiple choice questions based on chapter five, the reading of last week, and kind of limited time, but I think it's something that you can probably thumb through and answer pretty quickly. Speaking of last week, let's kind of take a peek into what was happening. There was quite a lot, and from what I gather, I believe a lot of the material from last week is due tonight, just in case you have emergency questions before the due date and you want to ask something, I'll be available for that. But I think I'm starting to gap some people. No, normally, uh, more individuals will have the the assignments that are due that same day done by that day. But for this time, I think some people haven't necessarily dived in just yet, but I know they will. And it's totally okay if you do submit after the deadline with the understanding that it may present a problem in the future because there will be a pretty strict cutoff time. And if you if you start to have outstanding work toward the end, it may be too much for you to do, right? So there is definitely a drawback into being indebted with your time in most classes. But I also know that we're kind of tapering off, and over the next few weeks, there will be a generous amount of time for you to get through with certain things. But the chapter five was from the that all in one book that we've been using quite a bit, and it was basically just navigating the file system, which is stuff we've been doing from week number two. There was a high level capture the flag. I mean, this was like put out by professionals. Like I consider the men in the video to be professional Linux users. These guys are probably have over decades of experience navigating the Linux and probably held various roles, and they're doing even security as well. And capture the flag does exist. It is a huge thing. There are many, many websites out there from all sorts of levels. There's one called Pico CTF, and they're catered to like middle schoolers and all the way up from middle school, and then no ceiling. It goes up to as far as you can go, but it engages young kids, kind of their first kind of uh, encounter with cybersecurity. So that's something to look out for. Yeah. And then I realized that I created this quiz, but I don't have a link to it anywhere. So what I'll have to do is place the link to the quiz in in the chat. So I'll click on here. Let me just see here, and I'll click here. I'll post it in the chat, and all you got to do is be signed into Canvas, and then you should be able to access that quiz, no problem. Okay, I'm seeing in the chat, the bandit challenge was fun. Oh, I'm glad you did it, man. And it looks like some of you guys are pretty resourceful too, which is the whole idea. It's all about being resourceful. Um, so yeah, that was we have something similar to it, and there's going to be a bonus lab in the next couple of weeks once we talk about bash scripting. and you'll connect to another type of terminal with your shell or however you like to connect, and then you'll try to run this bash script so that you can bypass the code. It's like this brute force challenge thing. It was kind of weird. I know Joseph has some experience with it. So there was a lab 9, but after I saw what it was like and I got some feedback on it, I decided to change it around, and so that's what happened.
Yeah, I
Um,
had great difficulty with that lab.
yeah, it was weird. I guess it would have been nice to, and there wasn't much resources either, right? You couldn't really find much documentation on it either. But I guess the whole point of it was to realize that there was no key. You're searching for something that doesn't exist, and that you had to brute force your way and hack through that level. Um, and if that is the way that if that's the expectation, then hey, the whole approach should change, right? You're like, well, forget about moving around. But I think as you're navigating the system, you learn, what's what looks weird. You're getting familiar with the command line interface. You're entering in all these things, and so there's a lot of benefits to it. Just kind of thumbing around the system there. All right. So yeah, we will be starting our quiz right at 7:10. And then from there we're going to continue on. But yeah, last week's material wasn't too bad at all. Last week's material, um, and that is from week number 5. There was the capture the flag video. As I said, it was pretty high level stuff. I mean, I was watching some things and I was like, whoa, you actually ran a web server so that you could download a file in and to put it into your system, your terminal. I thought that was pretty neat. I've never seen someone do that before. I mean that just changes the whole game, right? Because if that's a big problem sometimes is getting files onto your terminal. But if you have a some kind of code of a web server, you could just spin that up and then just send it over. It was pretty neat. There's a lot of tricks. That's definitely a video to kind of like and maybe replay some of those commands that they were utilizing. And just the way to be organized and kind of problem solve seemed pretty interesting. So I thought it was pretty valuable. And then the lab, it looks like a lot of people have to get to that. So feel free to knock that out later tonight or sometime this week. I will be grading them as they come in. So that is what all of last week was about. We are going to get into the new stuff this week. And there are 2 labs, pretty straightforward labs. We'll talk a little bit about the chapter 6 reading, and then we'll look at those labs as well. You have to be able to modify the permissions of a file, and it's important to even know how to read the permissions of a file. And there's a way to do that when we type the ls command, which is probably one of the most used commands. But when you do the ls command and you also do it in the long format, it shows you everything in that directory, and it lists it out and gives you the permissions and other information, pertinent information that talks about when the file was last modified, how many bytes it is, how big is it, and also who can access it, what types of permissions are there on that file. And we'll learn that there are several different types of permissions. Then they do that for access control. It's part of the theory behind keeping the system safe. Is there has to be a way to kind of modify and organize access and who has access. All right, if you're just now joining in the chat, I have posted a quiz that opens up at 7:10. The quiz is about 4 minutes. It's pretty quick. We're going to do that in the next 10 minutes. The quiz closes out at 7:20. You can no longer access it after 7:20. But it is going to open up if you like. If you go to coming up, and if you're logged in to Canvas, you will have access to that quiz. It says Chapter 5 reading quiz. It is due tonight at 7:20, so that I just kind of sprung this on us. It's simply 5 points, and you take it, and then that's it. You get through it. All right. Now, if there is a situation where someone wasn't present and they, have an excuse and they would like to take that quiz, message me about it. If you're watching the recording, I do want to honor that. I do know that it's okay for you to attendance is not required. However, tonight there's this chapter 5 reading quiz. It's 5 questions. It should be open right now. So for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to give you some peace so you can just get in there, answer some of those questions, and get out. And as you get that done, we could review those questions right at 7:20. I guess for the other students who might have missed it, we'll have to prepare something else for them.
Mine says it's still locked.
Okay, is it?
I had to
So,
refresh mine a couple times and let me in.
Oh,
okay,
okay.
Yeah, I'm
I'll
in
refresh.
right now too.
All right.
okay, you're in. So give it a go. I will mute
Got
myself.
it. Okay.
And we'll come back. Let's come back at 7:20, guys. So I'm going to give you a quick 10 minutes, and we'll continue in 7:20. Okay, welcome. We are taking a 4-minute quiz. The link is in Canvas. It's going to be open until 7:20. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, it looks like almost everyone is done. Was there a? Oh no, it looks like we're having some technical difficulties. A few of you. Yeah, it was a quick little 4-minute thing. So when you said out of the 5 questions, you only answered one of them? I guess I'm not fully understanding. Oh crap. And you meant to go to the next question, right? Obviously, you meant to go to the next question. Um, I think I can give you one more attempt before the time runs out. Would you be able to do it in like 2 minutes? I know that's I can even let's see here. One sec. Wilson. Oh yeah. Finished and Wilson, refresh your screen. Give it one more go if you can. Uh, um, there we go. You're kind of racing against the clock now. Anyone else? Any other issues? All right, you should be good to go now. Log back in there. Well, by the way, this doesn't have a huge significant part of your grade. Okay, we're on the point system, so all the points are equal points. Some of you guys, this is just a tiny little drop in the bucket of all the points we've already accumulated. All right. And Scott, were you able to get back on and answer anything? No. Oh, you actually have another attempt. Maybe because it closes out at 7:20. Sorry about that, man. Um, so the request was to go over the questions, and let's just go on and do that. Let's make sure we're all on the same page. Begin. So here it's just a preview. Which command is used to change the current directory in Linux? All right, so you do have to change directories quite a bit. Anybody? I'm looking in the chat. It's
CD.
it's CD. CD's your guy. CD is going to do it. CD actually stands for change directory. I mean, even that'd be my guess.
all the way back to MS-DOS. Uh-huh.
It's yes, that's a huge thing. Uh, here we go. Which one of the directories is not in the root directory? And that doesn't even say the right word. It's supposed to say directory. Sorry about that. I hope that didn't throw anyone off.
The
It's
director has spoken.
it is share. It is share. The other guys are all there. They're in the home root directory. Um, And then here's one. What is the primary purpose of this directory, etc. directory? We did once talk about this. We mentioned that it holds the configuration files for the system and certain applications. So whenever you need to modify certain things, like if you're running a web directory, you will be in this bin quite a bit, or in this directory quite a bit, because that is where a lot of the configuration files are. So you will have to use some kind of text editor, log in there, and customize what you need to customize. Which command allows you to view the contents of a file and provides functionality to navigate the content one screen at a time? This one was actually kind of tough. I was thinking cat initially, but the truth is it's less. It's the lest command. Now cat will enable you to view the contents, but it doesn't provide any type of functionality like less does. So that was the last. And then number 5. What were these tricky questions? I hope it wasn't tricky, guys. I wasn't trying to trick anybody. Almost, the keyword was almost got you. What command is used to rename a file? MV. Yeah, you're moving the name of the file. It's kind of tricky. It's a little counterintuitive. But there it is. And I believe that is a 5 out of 5 right there. Those are the solutions to our little pop quiz. All right. All right, guys. So now we're gonna get into the lecture. I'm gonna go through these slides real quick, and then we'll talk a little bit more specific about some of the things that came up in this in the slide deck here. So first, the objectives are to learn how to configure the standard permissions, and then we'll look at what are some of the special Linux permissions. And then also they talk a little bit about the ACL, which you'll hear the acronym quite a bit. And that's the access control lists. So first, it's all because of this theory, or they call it a principle, right? So the system was built on this, and the same thing in every system. You know, when the internet first came out, it didn't have security in mind, and that became so hackable. And the same thing right now that's happening with quantum computers. Quantum computers are out, but they're not going to really truly release it yet until all the security has been put into place. Obviously, there'll still be problems because there are people, it's just the nature of humans, right? To look for certain loopholes and kinks and ways to get around certain things. It's just, it happens by accident. It can. So, but when it comes to computers, when they were first released to the general public, yeah, they had certain principles, and security was kind of put into place as much as it could have been. So you guys have probably all seen this before, but basically, you know, the idea, the theory is that you only are supposed to grant users applications and processes as much as they need it, and no more. And they even say this like in a lot of things that we do, right? When you're going to buy a bus ticket, or even in a Canvas page, there's links on the Canvas page that we may never use. So if you're never going to use it, why should it even be there? And it makes things a little bit more intuitive. Let's go on. So here, recognizing access levels. So there, both files and directories have access levels. Now the 3 is read, write, and execute, and that's pretty self-explanatory. The person with only read access will be able to just read it and view it. They won't be able to modify it. It's a little frustrating. Write, the ability to save changes to the file. So it supersedes read. And then execute is like the key. That is the ability to run a script or a program. So sometimes, like if we were to create a script, we have to make sure that that script has executable permissions, because by default it might not. And so if we try to run the code or run that program, nothing may not happen. Now the root user has the ability to read, write, and execute. I mean, he's like the god of the system. And the same thing is true for the directories. There's read, write, and execute. And so when they say write, it is the ability to create, rename, and delete files in that directory. And it requires executable attributes in order to for that to happen. And there are some abbreviations that are used when talking about the users, the groups, and then what's called the others, which is considered all users and groups who are not the designated user or owner or associated group. Okay. All right. So here is an example of looking inside someone's directory. So their directory appears to be in a projects folder. And they listed it out in the long format. They didn't do A. If you do AL or LA, that would list all of the files, including the hidden files. But this will do all the files as well, just not the hidden files. So it's fine. But when they do that, we see 4 different objects. There's a total of 4 items. And what we're going to look at is, what are those items and what does it mean on each row as it pertains to the name of the file here. Now, when you do in the long format, you look at the very first value. D represents that is a directory. It's not even a file at all. And you can tell by the color coordination that it is a directory. And so, and we also know that directory is probably not empty. It's got things in it. Now, we don't know how many things it's inside, but we do know that this is a directory. The others are files. And what we'll see is that the first 3 letters represent the permissions of the owner. The next 3 represents the permissions of the group. And then the last 3 are the permissions of the others. So we could see who would have access to this are based on the permissions here. So this is kind of just some kind of short hand notation of what are the permissions like. And here we could see that in the first file where it says project1.txt, it's an executable. And the owner of the file, which happens to be the student, has executable privileges. And that is also why it's green. All the files that are executable are color coordinated. Now, that's not always the case, depending on your setup and your customization of your system. So we'll look at that as well. So here's an example, and what I'll do is go through some of these slides just so we can kind of see it broken down. If it has a dash, it's a file. If it has a D, it's a directory. The second, third, and fourth fields represents, again, the read, write, executable, And if you see the dash, it basically means none. Okay, so it's it's a very restricted document. For the group, we look at the next set of fields, the 5th, 6th, and 7th, just as we described. Read, write, execute, and then finally read, write, execute. All right, we'll also talk a little bit about the values of the octal values, the characters that it uses, this command, the chmod, what do the numbers represent? We'll look at that as well, okay? All right, let's keep going. So basically here it is. The read value has the value of 4, the write value of 2, execute a value of 1, and then displayed with 3 fields with permissions added. So for example, if a user has read, write, and executable, if you add up 4, 2, and 1, the code is 7. And then if we have a file that is read, not write, but can execute, that's a value of 5. And if the others have no access, that will be 0. So the permissions would be put together for the 3 different groups, be 750. And so to actually change a file with to these permissions, you would do a chmod 750 and then the file name. Now, sometimes what people do is just 777. You see that so common. Chmod 777. But it's a little sloppy to always do that. 777 will definitely make your file executable, but anyone who has access to that file that's not even root user may be able to have full access to that file as well. But now if you're the only user in the system and and anyone who's using it that does not have your permission, so they're accessing illegally, yeah, you can get away with chmod 777. But you'll see a lot of different values for the chmod. And it just goes on and on. It really just depends on the configuration of the permissions of the file. There's also characters, okay, with operators. So plus X, for example, you might see that one day. Plus X, that means you want to make your file executable. Here's some examples. So you want to give a read to the others for file 1. Then you would do chmod 0 plus R file 1. Or you want to remove certain access. All right. And you'll probably get some practice at this. And as you do some of the reading, you'll see some of these. So here's another demonstration here of the chmod. And this is to kind of demonstrate the symbolic modes. What they're doing is they're creating a file, make directory permissions, they change in there. And then inside of there, they create a new directory and then they add more files, right? And then here they decide to use what's called the absolute mode to set the RWX for the user and the group, and then no access for the others. And then when you display the new permissions, you will see what's been done. right? And so we could probably try to duplicate this somehow. Let me see if I can pull up my Linux system here. I'm using my WSL. Let me make this not so big. Um, so right now I'm in my home directory. Let's do my present working directory. I'm here. List my files. It's been cleaned up. I do have a couple of files, but I'm going to create a folder and I'll call it permissions, kind of what they said, right? So I'll make directory permissions. All right, now I'm going to do ls. Where's permissions? Let's see. Oh, there it is. It's in blue. So I'm going to list it out now in the long format. And it's an alpha order. I see permissions. It has been created right at this time. And it is designated a directory. Because I'm the owner, I have read, write, executable privileges. And then by default, the group that I belong to has read and executable permissions, but not write. And then they also have the others have read and executable. So now I'm going to go inside this directory, permissions. I'm in there, and I'm going to create directory A. So mdr dira. See if I. And then I'm also going to create another file, call it file1. All right. And now let's list out everything in there. Well, let's clear this and then list it again. So now inside my folder, in my directory, I have two different things. I have a directory A, and then I also have file1. So now let's see the next thing we need to do. So they want us to set the file to RWX for the user of the group and the other. So I'm going to do a chmod 777 for file1. And now when I do LSL, it's fully loaded. And it even has changed colors, this file. So that's kind of the idea. That's kind of what's happening there. We can also modify the directory as well. Change mod 770. And then list it out. It does exactly what we want now. Read, write X, read, write X. Others have no access. Okay. All right. There are a few other things. There's the attribute. There's a command ls attr. So it's kind of easy to remember. You know, if you just think of ls as listing and then the attribute attr. Let me go back for seconds. Okay, no, yeah, I didn't skip anything there. Yeah, this is just kind of getting you warmed up to doing some of this, changing owners, changing permissions and whatnot. So that's not a problem. And then here we have what key demonstration using the the change owner and change RP. Yep. So it's all pretty straightforward. Basically, you will get inside a certain directory, touch these files, user, add, group, add. And then after that, you can display some of the attributes. And then here, what they're saying is to set the immutable flag for file 1, you can do this. And then finally, troubleshooting permissions. Is the user a member of the sales group? So they're giving you some kind of context or some kind of problem. You will check the attributes or the group ID, confirm that permissions have been applied, and then list them all out. So our lab, before we finish this, let's just go to a little bit, take a peek at one of the labs that we have. So we have 2 different labs lined up for us. In lab 10, you'll be modifying the file and directory permissions. And then in lab 11, modifying the file and directory ownership. But for this one, you'll get some practice. Obviously, if by chance your system doesn't have one of these, just use another, find another file or another folder to log into. So it shouldn't be a problem. They want you to actually create a directory and then do what I did. Add a file, add another directory, view them, set the permissions, change them, modify them, so on and so forth. And then also we're going to use this command here. You'll remove all the permissions for group and others from directory A. So that minus sign, you're doing GO for group and others, minus RWX, directory A. And then when you verify that, you will see what's in there. The other lab is similar, but we will be using the change owner command, and that is slightly different from change mod. And then we'll have some follow-up questions here. We saw in the video, a lot of guys I've noticed when they're messing around in Linux and they want to view certain things or find the value or see the kind of permissions you have, they type ID to verify certain things. And in the video of last week's material, I remember him doing that. This is the kind of verify that he's the root user or he's part of some group or something like that. So ID is pretty popular. And then there's other commands as well that we've been using throughout our course this week. So these labs are pretty straightforward, but now let's get back to where we were. So we're going to look at some of the special Linux permissions, and we'll talk a little bit more. We'll go into more detail about some of them, like the sticky one. So here we have the SUID and then the SGID. All right, it's pretty self-explanatory, right? It allows the specified user to have similar permissions to the owner without being the owner. And then files or commands can be executed as the owner. So that's pretty powerful. You're like an administrator at this point. And then SG, this will allow the group associated with a directory to be inherited by the files created in that directory. And so here's a scenario on how to go about doing that. All they're doing is just simply creating a directory. They're creating a user and then also a group name. And then what they do is modify that. They go inside this directory, do the groups into this directory, and that will change it. They switch users in here, file name, and then list it out, and they'll probably see the permissions that that user has, which he probably didn't have before when it was originally created. So in step 3, you will look at the original directories, and then in step 5, you will verify that it's been changed. And that's all. And you could do this on your own or also during the lab. It's similar to what you'll be doing in the lab. So there's something called the sticky bit, and this is it protects files within a certain directory. So you see here the 2 bullets that only the file owner or root user can delete the file. Without the sticky bit, any user with write or execute could potentially delete the file. And that may not be good. It could be accidental. So here it says listed out, long format, change mod, confirm SUID permissions is set for the executable, the groups, and then confirm the sticky bit permission is set, right? All right. Let's do this one. Then we're gonna go back and do a little bit more. We're gonna focus a little bit more on the sticky bit. I'll demonstrate a little bit of that, and we'll also get into a little bit more of the change mod. So here's one more thing now, the ACL concepts. Straightforward, pretty straightforward. Standard permissions are limited to just one user, one group. Cannot grant different access levels. ACLs permit multiple users to be given multiple levels of access, and also multiple groups. So this is the whole big concepts, guys. Pretty straightforward stuff. Here's the command. So in here we have some student in the projects folder, and then it's get f ACL command of project1.txt. And what it shows is all of this. The owner, the group, and all this other stuff. Pretty straightforward. We have read, write, no executable. This guy, just read, just read, just read. So they're now going to talk a little bit about how do you actually configure this. Use the set f ACL command to configure, and they simply just set it. Here's the command. The user is user A, RWX with file A. Now to do it for the group, notice how that's set up. And then also for the user and the group. And then to actually remove. Oh,
So if you did that command, could you do it? I see you do it all in one command, makes it better, I suppose. But is it possible you could use two commands to create one for users? And so
yeah,
yeah, okay.
yep. We could have, um, so that's kind of, so let's just look at that real quick. I mean, we have, what's time? Let's say I create a user. Um, I need a user called Joe or something like that. Hold on. Um, so I have some user named Joe, right? Now, what I'm gonna do is, did I ever I created a file. There's nothing in the file. Hold on, let's verify that real quick. File one, what I'll do is add some text into file one. So I'll do echo, hi, this is Joe. I'm just going to add that right into file one. Now let's just cat file one. So we have at least something in there. Now I'm going to do setf ACL for, well, let's just do file one first.
Hmm.
Actually, I don't even have the command. Let me see how fast this will be. It might be really quick. All right. I'll do set. Okay. Yeah, I mean, so I mean, kind of just following along with the way they did it. You can modify and change some of those control lists based on the file per user, depending on the user that you have. Yeah, for some reason though, when I did, let me see if it'll work again. If I do, um, I see the file, the owner who created it, the group, which is also part of the owner. And then we see that user that we created. Now that user has the information. So this is gonna list out everything, everybody who has access. I think I accidentally, yeah, there's something weird happened there, but so it's that kind of thing. Pretty straightforward stuff. Yeah, and that's about it. You'll play around with that ACL and the other modifications, which is pretty helpful because we are going to be moving into um scripting a little bit week 9. So right now for week 9, or week 8, it says project. That's not going to be there. So that's going to be updated. But the next week's material that will be due on the 21st, it's going to be pretty straightforward. All right. We're just going to be working with this lab. Now, you don't have to, when you go into this lab, and we'll talk about it more next week when we come to it. If you don't have certain amounts of memory or something like that, you can change these values. It doesn't have to be exactly like this. This is just all for instructional purposes. So again, I don't know the setup that you have or which one you're going to be working on. It may vary from person to person since we're not all using the exact same device. So just know that it won't be a problem for you to modify this if you're going to create some kind of volume or backup, and if you don't have this amount of memory or anything like that, don't worry about that. We can work around that. We could talk more about that next week, but we're pretty smooth sailing. Like I said, the work is tapering off a little bit. So if you feel like you're a little behind or whatever, it shouldn't be a problem for you to get caught up over the next week or two. And then in week 8 is when we will start to look at the basics of some scripting and things like that, and working with some text, and then carrying out certain tasks. So we'll build on that for like 2 weeks in a row. And I believe it says week 11 here, but I think it might be a week 12. This might be off a little bit. I have to double check that, uh but yeah, no, we're making good progress. We're just kicking along. Um, there will again, there will be a final multiple choice, probably about 25 questions or so. Shouldn't be anything too terribly difficult. There will be some kind of project that we'll talk about in week 9, with the scripting and stuff like that, but nothing too intense. It should be something that anyone should be able to handle. And you'll also have resources at your disposal to help if you need any sorts of additional help there. Other than that, guys, that's pretty much all I have on the agenda for tonight. It's pretty straightforward stuff. Good job on those quizzes. Sorry if there were technical issues and glitches. It was kind of a spontaneous thing. I may or may not use it again. I don't know, but no worries. It wasn't too
It was fine. I'm not opposed to impromptu quizzes or nothing. I just was a bonehead. Press submit. That was on me.
Yeah, it was a weird thing. Yeah, it might pop back open again, and if so, I'll give plenty of notice, and and then you could just maybe set your watch to it or something, and do it on your phone or something.
Yeah.
But depending on you know, I can definitely that's not an issue because I don't want you to feel shortchanged or anything. I did kind of put the time, but because I was just thinking that I just wanted it to be something kind of quick and easy and just kind of.
Yeah, no, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with what you did. I just need to be careful where I'm clicking.
Okay, yeah. No, that's great. Well, I'm gonna end the recording here, and we are gonna pretty much wrap it up. If there's no other questions, you guys have Still a little bit of evening left before we call it quits for the day.